The Mniwashte, our good river, no longer sings the song I knew as a boy. Its voice now is a choked whisper, a sorrowful sound that mirrors the ache in my own chest. How, Kola? I am Mato, bear in the Oglala Lakota tongue, and the winters etched on my face are many. Each one has deepened my bond with Unchimaka, Grandmother Earth, but also my grief for this wounded Wakpa. This river is not just water, it is the lifeblood of our Oyati, pulsing with the spirit of ancestors, a sacred artery now clouded and struggling. Its clear laughter, where our children once splashed and our people sought visions in the Anipi, is a memory that stings like the chemical bite now carried on its current. The Washichu, the white man, the taker of the fat, arrived like a storm that never truly passes. They came with their iron horses, their talking papers filled with promises as hollow as a rotted tree, treaties signed with solemn faces and then broken before the ink had dried, their greed a bottomless pit. They tore into the heart of our Paha Sapa, the sacred black hills, our Axis Mundi, for the shining yellow metal that bewitches their souls and blinds them to the sacred. They herded us onto reservations, patches of land often deemed undesirable by them, until their insatiable hunger found something new to covet beneath our feet or flowing through our ancestral lands. The story of injustice is an old, bitter song, a lament our people have been forced to sing for generations, a chorus of stolen lands, fractured lives, suppressed ceremonies, and a relentless, grinding inequality that seeks to diminish us, to render us invisible footnotes in their triumphant narrative of progress. But the Washichu's capacity for desecration knows no bounds. A new verse, more insidious and poisonous than many before, has been added to this sorrowful song, a venom that seeps not just into our lands, but into the marrow of our bones, into the innocent bodies of our children. Some years ago, a corporation, cloaking itself in the innocuous name North Star Consolidated, descended upon the lands bordering our reservation, just upstream from where our community draws life from the Mniwashte. They erected a vast featureless plant, a gray scar upon the prairie, promising jobs that, like so many promises before, largely materialized for outsiders, for their own kind, and a new era of prosperity. Their representatives, men in sharp suits with slick smiles and hands that never touched the earth, assured us in community meetings, their voices smooth and condescending, that their operations were state-of-the-art, clean, and environmentally friendly. They presented glossy brochures filled with images of pristine landscapes and smiling, diverse workers, none of whom looked like us. We, who have lived in reciprocal relationship with Unchimaka for millennia, who understand the delicate balance of giving and taking, knew the profound hollowness of such words from those whose worldview reduces the sacred to mere resources to be exploited and discarded. The poisoning began insidiously, a subtle corruption. At first, it was an unnatural sheen on the water's surface after a heavy rain, a faint, unfamiliar chemical odor carried on the north wind, easily dismissed by the willfully ignorant. Then, the Tokahaya, the first ones to suffer, were the fish, the walleye, the catfish, once so plentiful, began to appear floating belly up along the riverbanks, their eyes clouded with an unnatural film, their bodies limp. The sacred willow saplings and the ancient cottonwoods that lined the Mniwashte, whose leaves once danced and whispered secrets to the wind, started to wither, their vibrant greens turning a sick, mottled yellow even in the heart of summer. The air itself felt heavier, tainted, and then the sickness, the tahangni, crept into our homes, into our people. It began with persistent skin rashes that no traditional salve could soothe, with gnawing stomach pains and a debilitating nausea, then progressed to relentless coughs that rattled our chests and stole our breath, a profound, bone-deep weariness that settled upon us like a shroud. Our children, our Wakanyéja, the sacred little ones, were hit the hardest, their developing bodies less equipped to fight this unseen, insidious enemy. My own Itļókaģata, my beloved granddaughter, Cante's younger brother, little Lakota, friend to everyone. He was a whirlwind of joy, his laughter as bright and unrestrained as the prairie sun. He developed a persistent tremor in his small hands, making it difficult for him to draw the horses and warriors he so loved. His laughter, once a constant melody in our small home, grew faint, then infrequent. The tribal clinic, chronically underfunded and perpetually overworked, staffed by dedicated but often overwhelmed doctors and nurses, could offer little solace, only tentative diagnoses, worried frowns, and referrals to specialists miles away, a journey many of our families could ill afford. We knew, deep in our spirits, in the ancient wisdom that flows through our veins, we knew the Mniwashte, our life-giving sacred river, was being systematically poisoned, and North Star consolidated, with its false promises and arrogant denials, was the source. Our tribal council, led by good men and women trying to navigate a system rigged against them, sent formal letters, made countless phone calls. Their concerns met with bureaucratic delays and carefully worded non-responses. I, along with other elders, men and women whose faces are maps of resilience and sorrow, spoke at their sterile, corporate-sponsored town hall meetings. Our heartfelt words, our pleas for the health of our children and the sanctity of our river, were met with polite, infuriatingly dismissive smiles from their smooth-talking corporate representatives and their phalanx of lawyers. They brandished their falsified water sample reports, documents filled with technical jargon designed to confuse and intimidate, claiming everything was well within acceptable federal limits. Acceptable to whom? To those whose children weren't drinking the contaminated water. To those whose gods resided in profit margins rather than in the sacred flow of a living river? The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, the very body created to protect the environment. When we finally managed to get a regional officer to listen after months of persistence, said they would initiate a preliminary assessment, a bureaucratic phrase that, in our long experience, often translated to do nothing substantive until forced by overwhelming public pressure or a catastrophic event. The inequality was a stark, brutal reality. Our lives, our Lakota lives, our sacred river, deemed less valuable, less worthy of protection than corporate profit margins and political expediency. Despair is a heavy, suffocating blanket. It can smother the will to fight, extinguish the embers of hope. I saw its shadow in the eyes of my people, a weary resignation. But then I would look at Lakota, his small face pale and drawn, his bright spirit dimmed by an invisible poison. I would walk by the river, the Mniwashte that had nourished my ancestors for countless generations, and I would feel its spirit weeping, its voice choked. An old anger, the righteous, sacred anger of a Lakota Itļókaģata, a warrior whose sworn duty is to protect his people, his land, and the sacred ways, began to smolder within me, fanned by the winds of injustice. If the Washichu's laws and their compromised agencies would not protect us, then I, an old man, would find another way. The old ways taught us to observe, to be patient, to listen to the land, to become part of the landscape. These were skills the corporation, in its technological arrogance and cultural blindness, would not expect, would not even comprehend, from an uneducated Lakota elder. So, I began to watch. For many moons, through the changing seasons, I became a shadow along the riverbanks, a whisper in the rustling reeds, using game trails and hidden paths unseen by those unfamiliar with the intricate tapestry of this land. I learned the rhythms of the North Star plant, the shift changes, the patterns of their indifferent security patrols, the rumble of their heavy trucks. And I saw things that confirmed the dark suspicions gnawing at my soul. Often, under the cloak of deepest night, when the moon hid her face or was but a sliver in the star-dusted sky, I saw pipes, cunningly hidden during daylight hours, sometimes submerged, extending like venomous snakes into the heart of our river. I smelled the chemical stench, raw and acrid, far stronger than during the day, a smell that burned my nostrils and spoke of unnatural things. I needed proof, irrefutable proof, the kind of proof that their slick, expensive lawyers and their polished PR men couldn't deny, couldn't twist, couldn't bury under an avalanche of corporate doublespeak. My granddaughter, Cante, whose Lakota name means heart. She is a bright spark in our community, a bridge between the ancient wisdom of our people and the bewildering complexities of the modern Washichu world. She went away to the white man's college, learned their ways of technology, their methods of communication. But her heart, true to her name, remained firmly rooted with her people, with the old ways, with the struggle for justice. She is an activist, a digital warrior, her voice amplified by the tools of this new age. When I finally confided in her, my voice heavy with what I suspected, what I knew I must do, her eyes, so like her mother's, so like my own wife, who now walks the spirit road, flashed with a fierce, protective determination. Itļókaĝata, she said, using the respectful term for grandfather. We will show them. We will make the world see. Their darkness will not prevail against the light of truth. Cante, with her practical wisdom, procured for me a small, durable video camera, one that could see in the dimmest light a silent eye to witness their crimes. She patiently taught me how to use it, how to hold it steady, how to capture what was needed without drawing attention. It felt alien in my old, weathered hands, this piece of cold metal and glass, so different from the feel of a sacred pipe stem or a hunting bow, but I understood its potential. It could be a weapon, a powerful tool to speak a truth that was being deliberately, systematically silenced. The nights were long, and the prairie cold bit deep into my bones. I would lie hidden in the dense brush along the riverbank, sometimes for hours on end, motionless, the camera clutched in my hand, my breath misting in the frigid air. My old joints ached, my muscles stiffened, but the image of Dakota's pale face, the memory of the river's once vibrant song, the burning shame of our people's suffering, these things fueled my resolve, kept me strong, kept me vigilant. There were close calls. One night, a security patrol with powerful flashlights swept dangerously close to my hiding spot, their voices loud and careless. I held my breath, pressing myself flatter against the cold earth, praying to Wakang, the great mystery, that the rustling leaves or a startled animal wouldn't betray my presence. Then, one moonless, starless night, a night so dark it felt as if Unsimaka herself was holding her breath, I captured it. Clear, undeniable, damning footage. A large, corrugated pipe, one I had suspected but never seen so clearly, usually submerged and cleverly concealed by overhanging willows, was visibly discharging a thick, dark, viscous effluent directly into the Mniwashte. The video showed the toxic plume spreading like a black cancerous growth, iridescent and foul, carried by the current downstream, directly towards our lands, towards our homes, towards our children. I filmed the dead fish, more numerous than ever, caught in the eddies nearby, their bodies bloated. I filmed the sickly, discolored vegetation along the banks, coated in a slimy residue. I even managed, from a safe distance, using the camera's zoom, to get footage of company trucks near this clandestine discharge area at an unauthorized hour, their presence a silent admission of guilt. My heart pounded in my chest, not with fear, but with a grim, triumphant sense of purpose. I had them. The river itself had borne witness through my eyes, through this small seeing machine. When I returned to our small home before the false dawn and showed the footage to Cante, her breath hitched in her throat. Her usually expressive face was a mask of controlled fury and profound sorrow. "This is Itјókaĝata," she whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears and a fierce warrior light. "This is undeniable. This is their undoing." For the next few weeks, I watched Cante, my heart, as she sat before her glowing screen, her fingers dancing across it like she was weaving a new kind of blanket, one made of light and shadows. My shaky images of the poison pipe, the suffering of our people, the sorrowful words of our elders, she took them all. With a reverence that touched my old heart, she blended them with the haunting calls of the flute, with faces of our ancestors drawn from brittle photographs, painting a story that was both ancient and terribly new. She spoke with me for many hours, her recording machine capturing my words as I spoke of the river's sacredness, of broken treaties that live as fresh wounds, of the sickness stealing our Wakanyesha. She talked with other elders, with the mothers who held their sick children, their voices trembling with a grief and rage that needed no translation. She delved into the Washichu's own records, unearthing North Star's hidden trail of broken promises in other places, adding their own lies to the weight of our truth. She titled the moving picture story, Itjókaĝata, the river of our ancestors, our future. It was not long, perhaps the time it takes for the sun to travel a short arc, but every moment was filled with the weight of injustice, a testament to our suffering, and a powerful call for others to stand with us. Cante then prepared to send our story out into the world, not with the beat of a drum to gather the tribes, but through the invisible pathways of the Washichu's own making. She spoke of reaching many fires, far beyond our own, of sharing our truth with those who had never heard a Lakota voice, never understood the sacredness of a river. Our plea was simple: protect our Lakota water. Stop North Star's poison. We told them our river is sacred, that water is life itself, and that treaties must be honored. These thoughts, these core messages, she wove into her calls for action, sending them out to other Native nations, to those who fight for Grandmother Earth, to those who write the news, and even to those whose songs are heard by millions. Like the first small streams of spring melt, the messages began to return. A few voices at first, then more. Cante would show me on her screen how our river's story was being carried, further and further. One woman who writes of the earth's troubles for many to read, she took up our cause. Then a famous Lakota actor, a man whose face is known in many lands, he spoke our truth with a powerful voice. It was then the trickle became a flood. Our story carried on a current of shared anger and compassion, touching shores we never dreamed of. The views on the moving pictures climbed higher than the tallest cottonwood. Hundreds of thousands, then 1 million, then many more. Words of support arrived from every direction of the sky, from lands far across the great waters, expressing shock, outrage, and a shared shame that such blatant disregard for our Mother Earth and her indigenous children could still occur. People raised their voices in unison, demanding action, demanding accountability. The newsbringers, the same ones who had once dismissed our pleas, were now calling Cante, their own sense of urgency suddenly kindled by the fire of global opinion. The name North Star Consolidated, once a faceless corporation, became a symbol of greed and dishonor around the world. The EPA, the agency that had turned a deaf ear, suddenly found itself listening to a roar. Their talking lines were filled with angry voices. People gathered outside their tall buildings, carrying signs with Cante's words, their numbers growing, many of them allies she had awakened. Before many suns had set, men in suits from the EPA, this time with news cameras following them, arrived on our reservation. They came with their shiny machines to test the water, not just to look, but with orders to find the truth the world was now watching for, a truth we had already shown them. North Star Consolidated, caught like a coyote in a snare by this sudden storm, began to howl. Their chief, the man with the smirk I remembered, spoke many angry words, calling us liars and worse, saying we were trying to steal their money. They threatened to use their Washichu laws against Cante, against me, against anyone who shared our story, but their words were empty air against the truth of what I had seen, what Cante had shown the world. Their own standing began to fall, like a tree with a rotten heart. Their nightmare was just beginning. The EPA's new investigation, guided by my hidden camera's eye and their own thorough tests, confirmed what we had known in our hearts and seen with our eyes. North Star had been feeding a poison stream of toxic waste into the Mniwashte for years, covering their tracks with false papers. The poisons in our water, where our children drank and played, were counted at levels that were hundreds, even thousands, of times higher than what their own laws called safe. The Washichu's justice, slow as it often is for our people, finally arrived. The EPA struck North Star with a fine larger than any elder could remember for their deliberate breaking of the law. They were ordered to stop their dirty work at once and to pay for the healing of the Mniwashte, a healing that will take more seasons than any of us will see and cost them more money than they could count, though no amount could ever truly repay what was lost. Some of their leaders, including that smug chief, faced the Washichu's courts for their crimes against our river and our people. Their false face of a good neighbor was shattered, leaving only the ugly truth of their greed and deceit. There was a quiet, solemn gathering in our community when the news became official. It wasn't a joyous, loud celebration, for the damage to our river, to our health, to our trust, was still profoundly present. The sickness still lingered in many of our homes. Little Lakota was still weak, though the doctors, now armed with a clearer understanding of the toxins he had been exposed to, were more hopeful for his eventual recovery. But there was a profound, palpable sense of vindication, of a heavy burden finally lifted from our collective shoulders. We had faced a modern-day Wasiku giant, a corporate monster armed with wealth and political influence, and with the ancient wisdom of our ancestors and the innovative tools of a new generation, we had struck a mighty, resonant blow. We had forced the system, so often deaf and blind to our cries for justice, to listen, to see, and finally, to act. Some might call what we achieved revenge, and perhaps, in the raw, human heart, there is an element of that. There is a certain grim satisfaction in seeing those who harmed you so grievously, so callously, being held accountable, their arrogance humbled, their ill-gotten power checked. But for me, for us, it was always more than revenge. It was about justice. Yes, a justice long overdue. But more profoundly, it was about survival, about protecting what is sacred and irreplaceable, about ensuring a future for our children and our grandchildren where they can know the Niwashte not as a poisoned, sorrowful vein, but as the good river, the life-giving river of our ancestors. It was about reclaiming our narrative, our agency, our power to protect ourselves. The Niwashte still flows, though its healing will be slow, arduous, and painful, much like the healing of our people from generations of trauma. The fight is not over. For Indigenous peoples, the fight for our lands, our waters, our rights, our very existence, is never truly over. There will be other corporations, other threats, other forms of injustice. But now, there is a renewed spirit in our community, a rekindled fire of resilience. We have learned, or perhaps relearned, that our voices, when raised together in unity, amplified by the courage of allies who stand with us in solidarity, can shake the very foundations of injustice. My granddaughter Cante, she walks taller now, her heart even stronger, her voice a beacon for other young Indigenous activists. And I, Maru, an old Lakota man who has seen too much sorrow, I know now with a certainty that settles deep in my spirit that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one small act of courage, guided by the timeless wisdom of the past and empowered by the innovative tools of the present, can indeed change the course of a river, and perhaps, just perhaps, even the course of history. Pila Maya. Thank you for listening to my story.